7 victims in 7 days. In 2016, Atlanta was terrified. This is a city well used to struggle and strife, as well as the sinister hand of serial murder. But this was different. This time it wasn't about robbery or rape or murder. In fact, no one could figure out what it was about. Women were being savagely attacked, disfigured, facial features cut and mangled, and their mouths split from each corner up to the bottoms of the earlobes. A horrifying Cheshire grin that reflected the face of the assailant, the woman with the split mouth. Drinking whiskey in the kitchen and telling scary stories around the fire. Music, monsters, and mayhem, killers, cannibals, and cults. Fearful fiction and furious fact, tall tales, and terrible truths. This is a scary home companion.
Thanks for joining me tonight. I've got some great music for you. We'll take some calls and talk about whatever's on your mind. I think I might have an idea what that is. I'm going to try and distract you from all this bad news. After all, music is our refuge. I'm Nora, this is The Night Desk, and you're listening to Atlanta 91.3.
Frankie finished up her smoke, then got back into her car to check and see if she had any fares waiting. Now that she was driving again, as a job, she no longer smoked inside her own vehicle, and there was something about that made her feel slightly less American. Come on, it's her car. She could smoke in it if she damn well pleased. It only took one night of driving for this new ride-sharing platform, and she knew that had to change. Freedom isn't free, but neither is rent or keeping her deadbeat kids afloat. The only people that were using this phone-based taxi service were young, and apparently these days young people were not smokers. If she wanted to take this seriously and to make money driving like the old days, she needed a car that smelled as clean as it looked, which was a concession Frankie was willing to make. She kept thinking of it as a taxi service, which, of course, it was not. This was something new, an app that connected people needing rides to drivers that had clean records and wireless payment options. Francesca Porto, Frankie to anyone who was allowed to call her by her first name, had cut her teeth as a cabbie in Atlanta holy shit, it was creeping up on 30 years ago at this point. She'd been a hack. That's what they called cabbies back then. They called them hacks. She worked for a major company for a while, but the politics of dispatch just got to her. So she ended up peeling away and running her own gypsy cab for a few years. These days, they were all gypsy cabs, which to her was great. There was no dispatcher to kiss the ass of. There was no politics to play to get good fares. It was a very competitive market, but so far the playing field felt level enough. Frankie got behind the wheel and checked the app. 3 rides needed within 15 blocks of where she was parked. Then the screen refreshed and it was back down to 0. She sat for a few minutes, hitting refresh every so often. Frankie really was doing her best to try and stay current, which was only possible thanks to the tech support from her deadbeat kids. And with that, she was close. But this was just outward. She was adapting to trends and technology to survive. Inside, Frankie was the same roughneck cabbie from Lakewood Heights that she had always been. And that meant a smile, and that meant good manners, but that also meant a .38 snub nose under her seat in a quick draw holster, just in fucking case. She also kept a handful of burners, throwaway cell phones, under the passenger seat. They sold regularly enough to be worth buying in bulk. Frankie refreshed the app again and found there was a new fare waiting, 3 blocks away. She was in on it first and then off to pick up her first passenger of the night.
Just got word that tomorrow morning our beloved mayor, the chief of police, and a growing number of men in black suits will be holding a press conference. That's right, another press conference. This time to address the 7th victim in the recent string of attacks. She passed away earlier this evening at Mercy May Hospital. You know, we're all a little on edge, and maybe that's okay. More than ever before, you've got to watch your back and keep your head on the swivel. If you don't, the woman with the split mouth might put it on one for you.
The app told her who, from where to where, and when. In this case, it was Corinne Lee, going from 1515 Courtwood Ave to the airport. ASAP. As had become her custom, Frankie stopped a half block away to reconfirm all the information and to make sure the ride hadn't been canceled. Everything was in order. She started to creep forward when a young woman, who could only have been the passenger, stepped up to the curb and waved her down. It was a short, slender woman with a heavy gym bag over one shoulder. Curiously, she was wearing a pale blue surgical mask. Frankie just let the car idle, approaching the young woman very slowly, getting in a nice long look. Absently, she reached down and brushed her fingertips against the handle of the Saturday night special under her seat. It always calmed her. She stopped beside the young woman and rolled down the shotgun window. "Corinne Lee?" The woman nodded. "Airport, right?" She nodded again. Even from 6 feet away, the woman smelled strongly of disinfectant. Her hands were painfully clean, dry, and cracked. Frankie had a gun, so there was nothing to worry about. She hit the unlock button, and Corinne Lee bounced into the back seat. "Thank you," she said softly. "I'm new here, and I was a little scared out there by myself." Corinne had a very mild speech impediment. It sounded like there was a soft whistling when she breathed. I'm glad the driver is you. I don't trust, well, you know." Frankie nodded and fiddled with the radio.
Music continues to soothe the savage within us all. Doesn't matter if it's a mastodon or saber-toothed tiger, or a woman with a scalpel. Times change and our predators change right along with them. If it were me, and it is, I'd just stay inside and listen to music all night. I'm Nora at the night desk. I'm not going anywhere, and neither is 91.3.
Frankie drummed her fingers on the wheel. In the back, Corinne stared absently out the window. Her bag was sitting next to her, but it was still hooked over one shoulder. She was holding a phone. She kept looking at it, but it never rang. That whistling sound when she breathed was getting just a little bit annoying to Frankie, so she turned the volume of the radio up, but it didn't seem to help. "So are you flying back?" she blurted out, just trying to make some noise. "Back where?" Corinne asked. "I don't know. Wherever. I'm just making conversation. You said you were new, and no offense, but you've got a bit of an accent, right?" Corinne nodded. Actually, it might have been a small bow, or it might have been a deep nod. Frankie didn't know, but she didn't want to inquire further. She already felt culturally insensitive enough. "No," Corinne said, "I'm not going home. I'm looking for a friend." "Is that why you keep looking at your phone? Are you waiting for him to call?" Corinne squinted a little. Her mask crinkled as if she was making a sour face beneath it. Hey, I'm sorry. No offense. It just seems like I've got a couple of daughters, yeah? And whenever I see one of them staring at the phone like you are, it's always boyfriend shit. Or girlfriend shit for Peggy, but that's beside the point. Do you know what I'm saying?" "Oh," Corinne said. "You think it's a boyfriend." She chuckled. Her mask crinkled again. Frankie could hear it. It was stiff, like it had just come fresh out of the wrapper. "No, it's not a boyfriend. It's more of a mentor." Corinne looked at the phone again, sighed, and stared out the window. They went under the overpass. The lights down here were harsh, ugly, yellow pink, like somehow the color of piss and the color of vomit had been mixed together. Frankie had a theory that they used the ugliest lights imaginable down here to discourage the homeless from setting up camp. The lights rose and fell as she drove. The tires hummed on the road. Corinne's breath whistled.
Today we got our first detailed description of the woman with the split mouth. I got a hold of the police sketch. I'm looking at it right now, and looks a little generic. Asian woman, petite build, 5 foot, maybe 5'2" in height. Brown eyes, black hair, and severe facial scars covered in a surgical mask. That part's a little bit creepy. They have 2 drawings, one with her hair up, one with it down. I think I like it better down. I do know this. If I bumped into her right now, I would never recognize her. Maybe, just for tonight, we shouldn't bump into anybody. I'm Nora at the night desk. I'm not going anywhere, and neither is 91.3.
These were two very clever and astute women. Both of them had heard every word Nora on the night desk had just said, although neither of them acknowledged that fact or allowed it to show on their faces. Corinne pretended to keep staring out the window as she watched Frankie from the corner of her eye. Frankie pretended to watch the road in front of her and studied her passenger in the rearview mirror. For the first time, really looked at her face. Just as they drove past one of those ugly yellow-pink lights, she saw the scars. Just barely, just a hint. That surgical mask had slipped down a fraction, revealing puffy white scar tissue just peeking over the top. Although it was such a brief flash of light, that didn't matter. Frankie knew what she had seen. She also knew not to let it show. She focused on staying cool, watching the road, maintaining the facade. And it was very natural. Frankie was an ace. Hard as nails, no doubt about it. But it wasn't enough. Corinne had seen that flash of recognition in Frankie's eyes. She knew she had been made. For a few seconds, it was so still. Just the hum of the tires and the soft thudum, thudum, thudum of the road. The soft music that now seemed a world away. The road rose beneath them, and the overpass fell away. The night was once again full of smoggy stars above. Very nonchalantly, Corinne held the phone to her ear and turned her head just a little to block the view. She spoke softly, but not too softly. "Yes, it's me. I'm with a driver. Her name is Francesca Porto. Middle-aged, white, dark hair. At least 2 children, daughters. She sees me. If I don't call you back in 20 minutes, well, you know what to do. Start with the daughters." She set the phone down on the seat next to her and locked eyes with Frankie in the rearview mirror.
I'm back with a bit of good news tonight. I just got word that Antonia Magruder, the second victim of the woman with the split mouth, is recovering and conscious after extensive cosmetic surgery. We've been following her recovery over the last few days, and now it looks like she's on the road to Wellville. In a prepared statement, her mother said that no one could ever take Antonia's smile. So let's all smile a little extra for Antonia tonight, and let's send out all that positive energy to her family. Let's continue to keep it positive at the night desk with one of my favorites.
Cruise down a thruway, welcome back my air. Santa Santa Santa, living with no care.
Frankie was already holding her gun, clutched in a sweaty hand, laying in her lap. She knew that it didn't matter. Her problem was now much bigger than just the little lady in the back seat. "Before you think about using that gun, please?" Corinne said softly. Or think about crashing the car off the next overpass? It won't matter why I don't call him back. If I do not, then bad things will happen, unfortunately, to your children. Frankie put both hands on the wheel. She stared at the road and she tried to think of what to say, but nothing came. Let us just go to the airport, as planned. She paused and then added, oh, yes, I will need that gun and your phone. Please. Frankie hooked the trigger guard on the .38 with her pinky and handed it back over her shoulder without looking. She handed her phone back next. Corinne emptied the bullets from the gun and the SIM card from the phone and then started tossing everything out the window, a little at a time. I'm sure you understand, she said, almost apologetic. Finally, Frankie said, it's really you, isn't it? You really did all those things to those girls. Corinne nodded. Why? And the passenger cocked her head just a little because she didn't understand the question. I understand revenge. And I ain't a thief, but I understand stealing. I can even wrap my head around killing for money or just being fucking crazy, but you, this isn't any of those things. So, why? She saw the sign for the off-ramp to the airport, just a couple of miles away. I do this because it is necessary. Because fear is an essential part of the world. Death is the end of suffering. Life is suffering. And suffering is why we live. Frankie shook her head, suddenly angry. It is not. Suffering is not life. That's bullshit. Not for us, Corinne corrected her. For them. For her. For the woman with the split mouth. I thought that was you. Oh, no. Everything I do is done in her name, for her dark glory. I was given a great gift and remade in her image. Now I share this gift. In time, they will come to her. You see them as victims, but I see them as chosen. Her voice drifted off, and the airport lights came into view.
Just had a caller raise a great point. Susie from Peachtree said she thought the advice women were given by the DRO agent, which was to stay indoors and to cover our face when we go outside, sounds a little misguided. After all, a woman is attacking women, so telling women that the answer is to hide seems a little backwards, doesn't it? Personally, I think we can handle ourselves. But hey, what do I know? I just play music. Although, I do play the very best music.
Take me to the parking garage. I will tell you where to stop. Frankie stared at the clock on the dashboard. She had 7 minutes left. And then, when we get there, you'll make the call, right? Oh, yes, of course. The scars on her cheeks rose just a little bit, indicating the possibility of a smile under that mask. She said, I like you. You don't let the fear control you. Even now, I know you're thinking about your children with their faces cut. And your hands are still steady. Stop here. Frankie mashed the brakes. Corinne leaned forward in her seat. That close, Frankie detected a hint of rot underneath the disinfectant smell. Make the call, Frankie said, and she tried to make it sound like a request. I will in 4 minutes, as promised. Now, I'm going to get out of the car and walk away. I really need you to make that call now. Oh, I will. But the terms, they're not for you to dictate. When I am away from you and I'm in the terminal, then I will make the call. But how do I know that you will? You don't. And since you don't have a phone to call your family and warn them, I'd suggest driving home just as fast as you possibly can. Just in case. Corinne was out the door in 2 shakes of a lamb's tail. Frankie watched her strolling away happily, that bag slung over her shoulder. As soon as Corinne was out of sight, Frankie dove under the passenger seat and grabbed one of the burner phones. She was tearing open the packaging when a sidelong glance into the back seat, something caught her eye. Another phone laying in the seat. Corinne's phone. Frankie's heart froze. She dropped the burner and snatched up this phone. She hit the button to bring it back to life so she can hit redial. But it stayed dark. The screen was deeply cracked, and it felt very light, as if there wasn't a battery in it. Oh, fuck me, she said, suddenly very relieved. The phone was dead. There never had been a call. It was a bluff. After she did a little deep breathing to pull herself back from the edge of a panic attack, Frankie fished out her cigarettes with trembling fingers and opened the door. Corinne was standing right there, waiting for her, scalpel in hand. Her surgical mask was dangling from one ear, revealing the gaping wounds and gummy scar tissue that comprised her lower face. And she sliced Frankie across the mouth, from ear to ear, pulling back the cheeks and cutting away huge swatches of skin and meat, and then she carved off her nose and cut out both of her eyes. And then, just before she walked away, Corinne leaned in close and whispered, I'm leaving your ears so that you'll recognize my voice when I come back. Thank you for listening to another episode of A Scary Home Companion. Contact us on Instagram or Facebook. For the time being, we're also on Twitter, but I've been thinking a lot about getting rid of the Twitter. It's kind of toxic. Or you can cut to the chase and email the show directly at ascaryhomecompanion@gmail.com. Subscribe to the show on any and every respectable podcast platform. And please, if you've got a few minutes, leave a review for what you hear. We surely do appreciate hearing the thoughts on these stories from our listeners. Go to the A Scary Home Companion Patreon page and watch the post-mortem episode analysis video for this very episode. I do these deep dive videos for every single new episode, exploring the connections to other stories, trivia, making of details. Plus, there's a bunch of other shit, too. Long story short, support the Patreon and help the show grow and expand. The episode was edited and produced by Jeff Davidson and featured the vocal talents of Ashley Webster. Ashley is a fellow podcaster. We met recently through the Imagnville Podcast Network. She just started her own show called the Offbeat Momcast. The link to that show is in the notes. Other links in the show notes will take you to all the amazing artists that Nora on the Night Desk played this episode. Patti Francis with You're Dead, Red Trees with Driving Just to Drive, Emily Wells with Passenger, Stillborn Blues with Rideau, Jim Keller with Take Me for a Ride, Labasheeda with Last Ride, Isabel Nogueira with Inner Voices, and Chelsea Oxendine with the theme music.
Hey, it's Ashley, and I'm the Offbeat Mom, and I have a podcast called the Offbeat Momcast. Real original, right? This podcast is for any mother who just wants to vent about the reality of what it takes out of your soul to raise tiny humans. So if you've ever hidden in the bathroom for 10 minutes while your kid is tantruming over a squashed banana, or you drink more wine than you care to admit, then I think this podcast will be for you. You can listen to it on Buzzsprout, on Apple Podcasts, and you can find me at Offbeat Momcast on Twitter, and I said that weird, on Twitter and Instagram. I look forward to hearing from you.
Imagnville Podcast Network.